You will never forget the day when a shark tries to turn you into lunch. I still remember that moment. I was lying on the beach in Miami. The waves were crashing against me, and I felt like my life was on the edge. My heart was pounding, my leg felt like it was on fire, and there was no one around but my nephew Brett. Sweet, caring Brett. At least, that's what I thought. Brett's not a blood relative, of course, but he's been a part of our family since his mom married my brother, and I've always considered him mine. He pulled me out of the water that day. Thank God he was there for me. My leg was badly torn, but I could still hear his strong voice trying to calm me down and promising that I would be okay. He was my support in that moment, keeping me from panicking. He made me believe that I could handle it, even when I wasn't sure of it myself. A few months went by, and here I was limping around the house with a bandaged leg. I was in my 60s, but I always prided myself on keeping fit. Spinning classes, dumbbell reps, yoga, you name it. I wasn't about to let a vicious shark take all that away from me. Brett moved in with me to help me recover. He said I needed someone by my side in case I tripped or, God forbid, hurt myself more. And I had to admit, having someone around who genuinely cared about me made the whole ordeal a little less unbearable. It wasn't just the physical pain, but the mental strain as well, and Brett's presence made it all a little less overwhelming. Brett was now a sturdy young man of 28, built like a soccer player, with a grin that could charm a bird out of a tree. He helped me with my exercises, pushed me into the pool for water treatments, and made jokes to keep my spirits up. Honestly, at first I thought it was still the same sweet Brett I'd known since I was a kid. But the more time we spent together, the more I noticed little things that made me see him in a different light. The way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking, the way he moved my hair out of my face when I was tired. There was something about it, something I didn't want to admit even to myself. The small gestures began to stand out more. The way his hands lingered on my waist as he helped me up, or the way he covered me with a blanket if I dozed on the couch. He made me breakfast in the mornings. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs and toast. But he served it with such care, always making sure I had everything I needed. There was a tenderness in it, deeper than the tenderness a nephew should feel for his aunt. I could no longer ignore it, even if I wanted to. But one night, after a particularly hard day, things got harder. I was in pain, trying not to show it by going to rehab, and Brett was watching me closely, maybe even too closely. I could see something had changed in his eyes. He wasn't just my sweet, helpful nephew anymore. There was tension between us, unspoken but very real. It hung in the air like heavy moisture on the street, almost suffocating in its intensity. We were sitting alone at dinner that night, crickets buzzing outside the window and the Florida heat making everything sticky and slow. He looked at me and I knew, realized something was wrong. "Aunt Liz, I've been thinking," he began. There was a tension in his voice that made my stomach twist, but not in a bad way, more like I was about to do something dangerous, like go back into the ocean. His eyes were serious, more serious than I'd ever seen, and I felt my heart start to race. After dinner, he helped me onto the couch, put my foot on the leg, and then sat down next to me, closer than usual. His hands rested on my shoulders, and I felt the heat of his palms through my t-shirt. He looked into my eyes, searching, waiting for something, maybe permission, maybe a sign that I knew what he wanted. I loved him, but it wasn't that simple. I felt torn, conflicted, 1,000 thoughts swirling around in my head. I wanted to protect him, protect us both from whatever it was. But at the same time, I wanted to give up. I wanted to see where this connection would lead, even if it was risky. "You know, Aunt Liz," Brett whispered, his face a few centimeters from mine, "you're still the most beautiful woman I know." I laughed, trying to brush it off, but he wasn't kidding. The look in his eyes spoke for itself. There was something strange about him, something that spoke of all the times he'd helped me, touched me, hugged me as I leaned on him for support. I could feel my resolve weakening, the line between what was right and what was possible blurring in the dim light of the living room. It's strange how life puts you in these moments you never expected. I had a decision to make. I cared about him too, even more than I thought I would. We were alone, and he was the only one who supported me through it all, through the pain, through the frustration, even through the awkwardness of having to help me in the shower sometimes. I'd always prided myself on my independence, on never needing anyone, but Brett made me feel different. He made me feel wanted. He made me feel noticed in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was intoxicating, and it scared me. The days that followed were filled with a lot of emotion. Brett never pressured me, but his presence was always there, strong, soothing, and undeniably alluring. Every time he helped me, I could feel the tension building between us. When he helped me do a stretch, his hands lingered a little longer, and his touch became a little softer. I looked forward to these moments even though I knew I shouldn't. I began to notice the way his muscles tensed as he lifted me up, the way his eyes followed my movements. It was exciting and frightening at the same time. But boundaries mattered. I made sure to tell him that. I told him we couldn't let things devolve into something we would regret, something that would make the family look at us differently. He listened, nodding, but his gaze on me didn't change. There was still heat in it, the promise of what could be if I let it happen. He respected my words, but I could tell he didn't quite understand, or maybe he was just hoping I'd change my mind. I never let it happen, not completely, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted. The pull was always there, like a current beneath the surface, ready to drag us both under if we weren't careful. Those days of healing with Brett by my side were like walking a tightrope. It was exciting, intense, full of possibility, but also the danger of stumbling, slipping. Every day when he helped me up, put his arm around my waist as I waddled across the floor, some part of me doubted I would give up. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and I could hear his steady breathing from the next room, I lay awake, thoughts swarming in my head of what if. What if I let him kiss me? What if I let myself fall into his arms just once? What if I let myself forget about the world outside these walls? And there were times when it was even harder to resist. Like when we were in the pool and he was helping me with my water routine. The way he held me, his strong arms keeping me afloat, his eyes fixed on mine, it was electric. I could feel his heart beating against mine, and for a moment it seemed like nothing else mattered. The water around us seemed to disappear, and all I could feel was him. It took everything I had to pull away to remind myself that this was wrong, that we couldn't go down this path. There were other nights when the power went out and we sat by candlelight, talking about everything and nothing. He would tell me about his dreams, his plans for the future, and I would share stories from my past, things I hadn't told anyone in years. In those moments we grew closer, the barriers between us slowly breaking down. He looked at me with those eyes, filled with something I couldn't name: hope, longing, maybe even love, and it made me want to give in, to see where it might lead. But for now, I'm keeping that part of the story just there in the maybe, in the what could have been, because sometimes the best stories are the ones that leave a bit of mystery, the ones that keep you guessing, that keep you wondering what might have happened if you had taken that step, if you had let yourself fall. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the possibility, the tension, is what keeps the memory alive, what makes it special. Because life is full of moments like that. Moments when you're standing on the edge, looking into the unknown, and you have to decide whether to jump or walk away. And in Brett's case, I chose to walk away, even though some part of me had always wondered what it would be like to fly. Even now, when I think back on those months, some part of me aches with the memories. Sometimes I think about Brett, how he made me feel alive again, how he looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. I wonder if he thinks of me too, if he remembers those late nights, those quiet moments when it seemed like we were the only two people in the world. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But either way, I know that what we shared, even if it was just a possibility, was real. And maybe that's all I need.